Let's get one thing straight. When it comes to pure, nerve-shredding suspense, no war movie subgenre comes close to the submarine thriller. Forget the parades and glory. Down here, every ping and creak could be your last. Why do we keep coming back to these tales of men sealed in steel coffins, dodging death in pitch-black waters? Is it courage, madness, or just the world's worst case of cabin fever? Stick around, because the greatest World War II submarine films ever made are about to surface, and a few might surprise you. Destination Tokyo 1943. Let's get this straight. Before torpedo duels became a Hollywood obsession, and before submarine thriller was its own blockbuster genre, Destination Tokyo was already setting the bar. Released in 1943, right in the middle of the real war, this Cary Grant classic didn't just entertain, it helped define the entire subgenre. If you're searching for ground zero of the American submarine movie, look no further than the claustrophobic, sweat-soaked corridors of the USS Copperfin. From the opening moments, the stakes couldn't be higher. Grant's Captain Cassidy is handed a mission so secret it sounds like fiction. Sneak a U.S. sub deep into enemy waters, gather intelligence on Tokyo Bay, and set up the coming Doolittle raid. No one's ever tried it, and the odds of making it back alive are, well, let's just say Vegas wouldn't take that bet. Every inch of the journey is a test, tight passages, the constant hum of engines, the kind of pressure that can make even the toughest sailor crack. This film doesn't just throw you into battle, it traps you there. The crew, a collection of everyman types, from nervous rookies to seasoned hands, all stuck together in what's essentially a floating tin can with death lurking around every bend. There's a persistent sense of dread, broken up only by moments of gallows humor or quiet camaraderie, like a whispered prayer before a dive, or an offhand joke just as a Japanese destroyer passes overhead. Grant, usually the king of charm, plays Cassidy as a man who carries the weight of command like a lead anchor. Every decision, every risk, could send the whole crew to the bottom. And let's talk suspense. Silent running isn't just a tactic here, it's a recurring nightmare. Depth charges rain down, enemy ships circle, and the Copperfin has to slip past minefields and patrols, using nothing but brains, guts, and luck. The action scenes still pack a punch, with the film's technical advisors straight from the U.S. Navy, ensuring a level of realism that audiences had never seen. When torpedoes fire or bulkheads creak under pressure, you feel every bolt and rivet shaking. But Destination Tokyo isn't just about hardware or heroics. It's about the burden of command, the brotherhood formed under fire, and the raw terror and exhilaration of underwater warfare. At a time when America desperately needed on-screen heroes, this film delivered, but it didn't sugarcoat the cost. The finale is as much about survival and sacrifice as victory. No surprise that so many later submarine thrillers, American and British, owe their DNA to this wartime original. Put simply, if you want to know where the submarine thriller truly began, set your periscope to Destination Tokyo. It's not just classic, it's essential. Run silent, run deep, 1958. Step aside, stiff upper lip officers and square-jawed heroes. Run silent, run deep is where the submarine movie really found its teeth. If Das Boot was the nerve shredder, this is the mind bender. Released in 1958, it's a razor-sharp, old-school classic starring Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster, two alpha legends squaring off in a steel can somewhere in the Pacific. The movie isn't just about depth charges and torpedo runs. It's about obsession, pride, and the psychological warfare happening long before the enemy ever appears on sonar. Clark Gable plays Commander Richardson, a haunted, single-minded skipper who gets one last shot at hunting the Japanese destroyer that's haunted him for years. Burt Lancaster is the XO, a loyal officer forced to question everything as Richardson's plans turn riskier and personal. Sound familiar? That's because this film practically invented the modern, obsessed captain trope. Moby Dick at periscope depth, anyone? The tension isn't all from the enemy. The real fireworks come from below decks. The crew, caught between two strong-willed leaders, starts to crack. Trust unravels. Loyalties are tested. Gable simmers with the cool determination of a man who's lost too much to walk away. Lancaster, all coiled energy and moral backbone, is just waiting to snap. It's a battle of wits, not just firepower. Director Robert Wise, fresh off The Day the Earth Stood Still, knows how to keep an audience in a chokehold. The underwater battle sequences are pure old Hollywood suspense, using model ships, real Navy consultants, and sound design that makes every sonar ping feel like a heart attack. The movie gets the claustrophobia just right. Tight spaces, recycled air, and that gut-twisting sense that nowhere is safe, not even from the guy giving orders. When the final confrontation comes, Run Silent, Run Deep delivers on all fronts. Action, moral ambiguity, and a twist of fate that sticks with you. It's as much about what's happening inside the sub as outside, and for that, it's still the blueprint for every submarine thriller that followed. The Enemy Below, 1957. Let's be honest, submarine movies love a good game of cat and mouse, but The Enemy Below is the heavyweight champ of the duel. Picture this: Robert Mitchum as a stoic American destroyer captain, Kurt Jürgens as a cunning German U-boat commander, and the vast, empty Atlantic Ocean as their battlefield. It's a suspense masterclass, and for once, you'll find yourself rooting for both sides. How's that for breaking the rules? The real brilliance of The Enemy Below is that it refuses to settle for easy heroes and villains. Instead, it digs into the minds of its two commanders, Mitchum, haunted by loss but determined to do his duty, and Jürgens, a reluctant warrior trapped in a cause he doesn't fully believe in. The tension builds not just from sonar and depth charges, but from the mutual respect that grows between hunter and hunted. By the time their ships circle each other for the kill, you're holding your breath, torn between wanting both to win and neither to lose. The action is superb, especially for its era. Director Dick Powell, better known for musicals, dials up the suspense with close-quarters combat, sonar pings that might as well be ticking time bombs, and underwater explosions that look painfully real. The film's technical accuracy even won praise from the U.S. Navy, and the Oscar for Best Special Effects wasn't just for show. The cramped destroyer bridge, the suffocating U-boat interior, every shot makes you feel the sweat and the stakes. What really sets The Enemy Below apart is its refusal to demonize the enemy. Jürgens' captain is smart, humane, and deeply weary of war, a rare thing for Hollywood in the 1950s. By the time the credits roll, the final act of mutual respect and rescue feels earned, not forced. The message is clear. In the machinery of war, it's men, flawed, brave, sometimes desperate, who make the difference. It's not just a submarine thriller. It's a study in strategy, psychology, and empathy. The Enemy Below doesn't just thrill, it lingers, quietly challenging you to rethink what it means to be on either side of a battle. Torpedo Run, 1958. If you crave relentless action, impossible odds, and the agony of command, Torpedo Run is a must. This MGM-produced thriller puts Glenn Ford in the hot seat as Lieutenant Commander Barney Doyle, a U.S. sub-skipper with a score to settle and a target so dangerous the entire Pacific seems to be gunning for him. Released in 1958 and shot in glorious CinemaScope, this one's got all the hallmarks: underwater warfare, emotional stakes, and the kind of nail-biting tension that never lets up. The film plunges you straight into the cat-and-mouse nightmare of sub-hunting. Doyle's mission: sink a Japanese aircraft carrier that's not only a major threat, but also happens to be transporting American prisoners, including his wife and child. From the first sonar ping, you know this isn't just another shoot the enemy and go home story. Every move Doyle makes risks not just his crew, but the people he loves most. That's a twist that adds a whole new layer of suspense to every decision, every dive, every silent run. Torpedo Run doesn't just hit the standard beats. The action is tight and relentless. Depth charges, torpedo attacks, enemy destroyers, and the ever-present threat of discovery. Director Joseph Pevney keeps the pressure on, using the sub's claustrophobic corridors and the vast, unforgiving ocean to maximum effect. The sound of the engines, the nervous glances of the crew, the sudden jolts as bombs detonate nearby, everything is dialed up for maximum suspense. But it's not just about the hardware. Glenn Ford delivers a powerhouse performance as a man haunted by his duty and his conscience. The crew, especially Ernest Borgnine as his loyal exec, aren't just faceless Navy men. They're human, flawed, and desperate to survive. The tension builds to a gut-wrenching climax where Doyle must choose between personal vengeance and the safety of his men. It's a moment that defines what these undersea thrillers are all about: sacrifice, leadership, and the impossibility of clean choices in war. Torpedo Run nabbed an Oscar nomination for special effects, and it shows. For pure old-school Hollywood submarine suspense, this is a deep dive you won't soon forget. U-571-2000. Some movies kick open the hatch and dive right into controversy, and U-571 is one of them. If you've ever wanted to see Hollywood bend history like a pretzel and still serve up a pulse-pounding submarine thriller, you're in the right place. Released in 2000, this film goes all in on tension, action, and that patented "how will they survive" vibe, with just enough historical inaccuracy to spark an international incident. The plot's simple, but the stakes are sky high. A U.S. Navy crew, led by Matthew McConaughey, fresh-faced and determined, is tasked with boarding a crippled German U-boat in the middle of the Atlantic to steal its Enigma machine. It's a risky mission, based loosely, very loosely, on real Allied code-breaking efforts. One wrong move, and they're stuck in hostile waters, with every German in Europe gunning for them. Right from the start, U-571 throws the audience into chaos: torpedoes, flooding compartments, and claustrophobic panic. The sound design is relentless. Every creak and groan of the sub becomes a threat. Every depth, charge, an earthquake. Director Jonathan Mostow knows how to keep an audience sweating. There's no time to breathe as the American crew scrambles to evade destruction and outwit the Germans hunting them down. Now, let's address the elephant in the engine room. Historically, it wasn't the Americans who captured the first Enigma machine at sea. It was the British. This creative license didn't sit well across the pond, with even British Prime Minister Tony Blair publicly griping about the rewrite. Still, U-571 isn't trying to be a documentary. It's a Hollywood thrill ride, and on that front, it delivers. The special effects, practical sets, and white-knuckle pacing make every minute count. By the time the final torpedo fires, the crew's been battered, bloodied, and nearly drowned, yet somehow, you're rooting for them, historical nitpicking aside. U-571 isn't the most accurate submarine movie, but it's one of the most entertaining. If you want sheer high-octane tension in a steel tomb under the sea, this is your movie. Just don't use it for your history homework. The Frogmen, 1951. Not every World War II submarine movie sticks to tight corridors and silent running. Some, like The Frogmen, rip open the hatch and send you swimming straight into danger, literally. Released by 20th Century Fox in 1951, this Hollywood classic shines a spotlight on the Navy's underwater demolition teams, the legendary Frogmen, who paved the way for modern Navy SEALs and whose missions depended on the support and risks of submarines. Richard Widmark, the king of cold-blooded charisma, stars as lieutenant. Commander John Lawrence, a by-the-book officer dropped into a tight-knit team of Navy divers. Their job? Clear enemy mines, sabotage obstacles, scout landing beaches, and sometimes blow up a Japanese ship or two, all from the belly of a U.S. submarine deep in hostile waters. These guys are not your average sailors. They're a mix of adrenaline junkies and quiet professionals, each one knowing that one slip underwater means disaster. What makes the Frogmen so compelling is how it blends the tension of submarine warfare with the almost suicidal courage of underwater commandos. The film's first act piles on the claustrophobia, tight bunks, endless drills, and the ever-present threat of a depth charge turning your world upside down. But it's when the action spills overboard that things really crank up. There's a scene where a frogman has to defuse a mine with just a pair of wire cutters and more guts than sense. You'll find yourself holding your breath right along with him. The film is packed with action, sabotage missions, surprise attacks, and more underwater suspense than you might expect from a 1950s war flick. Director Lloyd Bacon keeps the camera close, making you feel the cold, the fear, and the camaraderie among men who trust each other with their lives. Widmark is all steely resolve, but there's a human side too. Resentment from the team, tough decisions under fire, and a growing respect that comes only from surviving together. The Frogmen was a hit in its day, even earning an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay. It might not have the big iconic set pieces of later sub-movies, but it's pure, tight Hollywood Woe 2 suspense with a fresh angle. If you want your sub-thrillers with a side of salt water and explosives, don't skip this one. Hell and High Water, 1954. Hell and High Water isn't your typical wartime submarine drama. It's a blend of Cold War paranoia, nuclear brinkmanship, and old-school action, all packed into a steel coffin cruising the icy North Pacific. This one stars Richard Widmark, who brings a rough, sardonic edge to the role of ex-Navy submarine commander Adam Jones, lured out of civilian life by a shadowy group of international scientists with a single mission: stop a secret atomic plot before it triggers World War III. From the opening frames, Hell and High Water lays on the suspense thick. The crew is a mix of seasoned Navy men and wide-eyed civilians, including a brilliant French scientist played by Bella Darby. The catch: none of them trust each other, and everyone's got an agenda. Their target is a rogue Chinese base rumored to be developing a doomsday weapon. But with enemy patrols, double crosses, and a torpedo that could show up at any second, the real threat might just be the tension brewing inside the sub itself. This movie stands out for its early use of widescreen cinema scope, filling every shot with looming pressure and vast frozen seascapes. You feel the cold in your bones and the suspicion thick enough to cut with a knife. Widmark's Jones is all bite, barking orders, butting heads, and never quite letting you know what he's really thinking. The drama plays out in tight quarters, with mistrust threatening to blow things apart long before the enemy can. The action, when it hits, is tense and grounded. The submarine isn't invincible. It leaks, groans, and creaks under the strain, and the crew's nerves fray with every silent running. Director Samuel Fuller, famous for his gritty style, pulls no punches. The stakes are global, but the fear is personal. A near disaster under the ice, a desperate gambit to outwit enemy destroyers, and the constant threat of betrayal keep the audience locked in. In the end, Hell and High Water is a rare beast, a submarine thriller that doubles as a nuclear-age nail-biter and a study in psychological warfare. It's not the flashiest film on this list, but it's one of the smartest, slyest, and coldest, both literally and figuratively. If you want your World War II sub-drama with a heavy dose of paranoia, this is your ticket. Submarine Command, 1951. If you want a World War II submarine film that dives deep into the American psyche and won't let its hero off the hook, Submarine Command is a must-see. Released by Paramount in 1951, this drama stars William Holden as Commander Ken White, a man haunted by the split-second choices that can mean life or death when you're under the waves. The movie opens during the final days of World War II, with White at the helm of the USS Tiger Shark. In the chaos of a surprise attack, he's forced to close the hatch and dive, knowing it will leave his executive officer stranded on the surface. The Tiger Shark survives, but White's decision and the guilt that follows echoes through every scene. The war may end, but the battle inside White never does. Unlike the usual patriotic adventure, Submarine Command is loaded with tension and tough questions. What happens to a commander when the war is over, but the ghosts of his decisions linger? When White returns to civilian life, he finds it nearly impossible to reconnect. The country is at peace, but he's still trapped in a steel coffin of regret and suspicion, especially as old crewmates return, including a former friend who's never forgiven him for that fateful order. Director John Farrow makes great use of real submarines, giving the action a you-were-there realism, claustrophobic, noisy, and full of little details about life underwater. Flashbacks show the frantic tension of sub-warfare, sonar pings, torpedoes flooding the tubes, depth charges rattling the hull. But the film never lets you forget what all that action costs the men inside, physically and emotionally. Holden delivers a tightly wound performance, full of simmering anxiety and flashes of old-school American grit. The supporting cast, including Nancy Olson as White's wife and Don Taylor as the bitter former friend, rounds out a drama that's as much about post-war trauma as about the fight itself. There's suspense, there's action, and there's a raw honesty you don't always find in early 50s war films. Submarine Command is a psychological thriller in a sailor's uniform, a powerful, underrated entry in the pantheon of Wadis Tor submarine movies, and a Hollywood answer to the "what happens after the last dive?" question that so few films dare to ask. Pacific Inferno, 1979. Here's a World War II submarine story you probably haven't seen on a dozen best of lists. And that's exactly why it belongs here. Pacific Inferno is the kind of gritty, low-key thriller that proves you don't need a massive Hollywood budget to crank up the tension beneath the waves. Made in 1979 as a U.S.-Philippines co-production, the film trades big-name stars and studio gloss for raw survival drama, ticking clocks, and a premise so wild it almost has to be true. American POWs forced by the Japanese to salvage treasure from sunken submarines in the wartime Pacific. From the first frame, you know this isn't your usual clean-cut submarine flick. The action kicks off in the hellish aftermath of the fall of Bataan, as two captured American Navy men, played by Jim Brown, yes, the NFL legend and Richard Jackal, find themselves facing a new kind of nightmare. Instead of a POW camp, they're volunteered by their captors to dive on wrecked submarines and retrieve millions in silver coins the U.S. dumped in Manila Bay to keep out of enemy hands. The catch? They've got no gear, little air, and even less hope. And failure is not an option. The Japanese guards make sure of that. What follows is a mix of submarine salvage thriller, POW escape drama, and buddy movie all rolled into one. The underwater sequences are sweaty-palmed, claustrophobic, and surprisingly effective for a late 70s B-movie. Equipment fails, air runs out. Each dive feels like Russian roulette as the men navigate tight compartments, live mines, and the constant threat of betrayal from their own side and their captors. Director Rolf Bayer wrings every drop of suspense from the muddy water and tight budget, giving you a front-row seat to desperation. But Pacific Inferno isn't just about thrills, it's about stubbornness and survival. Brown and Jekyll's chemistry keeps things ticking even when the odds look bleak. There's camaraderie, dark humor, and the occasional flash of hope, but always overshadowed by the question, how much are you willing to risk to sabotage the enemy and maybe, just maybe, live to see freedom again? This isn't a glossy studio epic. It's a down-and-dirty slice of World War II history, the kind that gets under your skin. Pacific Inferno may not have won Oscars, but for fans of lost submarine gems, it's a deep dive you won't regret. Above Us, The Waves, 1955, British. If you think Hollywood cornered the market on submarine heroics, Above Us, The Waves is here to prove the Brits had just as much steel under pressure. This 1955 thriller doesn't just dramatize a real-life undersea mission. It plunges you headfirst into the jaw-clenching, heart-pounding world of British midget submarines, the kind of mission so crazy and courageous you'd swear it had to be fiction. Based on the audacious 1943 attack against the German battleship Tirpitz, this film follows Lieutenant Commander Fraser, played with quiet, stubborn determination by John Mills and his volunteers, as they train to slip beneath enemy guns in tiny, barely seaworthy craft. Forget Hollywood glamour. This is World War II on the razor's edge, where every breath could be your last, and every groaning hole could mean you'll never surface again. The suspense builds from the first training montage. Imagine squeezing into a vessel not much bigger than a phone booth, crawling through ice-cold water, and rehearsing sabotage techniques for a mission most people think is suicide. The film wrings every ounce of tension from these cramped, dimly lit compartments, never letting you forget just how easy it would be for disaster to strike. One missed calculation, one faulty valve, and it's all over. What really sets Above Us, The Waves apart isn't just its technical realism, though. The underwater sequences and ship interiors are impressively authentic. It's the focus on the men, their resolve, camaraderie, and the mounting psychological toll. When the midget subs finally launch, you can feel every heartbeat and sense every jolt as they navigate minefields, evade patrol boats, and edge closer to the mighty Tirpitz's hull. The final act, planting explosives and escaping under fire, is a nail-biting, slow-motion thriller, shot with a patience that's rare even by today's standards. But beyond the suspense, the film has a quietly patriotic undertone, celebrating the unglamorous, everyday heroism of ordinary men facing impossible odds. Above Us the Waves doesn't shout about its triumphs, it shows them in sweat, mud, and stubborn grit. The fact that it's British is part of its charm. No big speeches, no over-the-top bravado, just sheer nerve and determination. If you want to see the other side of World War II, sub-warfare, less Hollywood, more history, but every bit as thrilling, this British classic should be at the top of your must-watch list. The Cruel Sea, 1953, British. Some war films dazzle you with explosions. The Cruel Sea crushes you with atmosphere, realism, and the constant unspoken dread of what lurks below. Make no mistake, even though it's not technically a submarine movie, this British classic more than earns its spot thanks to its brutally honest U-boat combat, emotional impact, and lasting influence on the genre. Based on Nicholas Montserrat's best-selling novel, the film throws you right into the thick of the Battle of the Atlantic, following the crew of HMS Compass Rose, a tiny corvette with a massive job. Protect Allied convoys from the wolf packs of German submarines that haunted the North Atlantic. At the center is Captain Erickson, played by Jack Hawkins with a combination of compassion, resolve, and exhaustion that feels painfully real. He's no iron-jawed superhero, just a good man forced to make impossible choices. What separates The Cruel Sea from so many other naval films is its raw, matter-of-fact honesty. The tension isn't always in a hail of depth charges or torpedo attacks, though there's plenty of that. Sometimes it's in the fog, the silence, or the weary faces of men who've been at sea too long. There are unforgettable moments, spotting a U-boat's periscope at the last second, making the gut-wrenching decision to attack with depth charges even as survivors of a sunken ship struggle in the water. The sea itself becomes an enemy, icy, endless, and merciless. The film doesn't glorify war, it reveals its cost. The constant strain of night watches, the relentless fear of sudden disaster, the slow burn camaraderie and heartbreak among the crew. Every emotion is earned, every sacrifice feels real. Real Royal Navy personnel were involved in production, and it shows. The authenticity of shipboard life, the exhaustion, and the sheer unpredictability of the sea. Despite being a British film, The Cruel Sea has left an indelible mark on submarine and naval thrillers everywhere. It's taught generations that sometimes survival is the only victory, and that heroism isn't always about winning, it's about enduring. For anyone who wants to understand the true meaning of undersea warfare, this is the final word. There you have it, the greatest World War II submarine thrillers ever made, from Hollywood pulse pounders to British undersea nail biters. Which one left you holding your breath? Did your personal favorite make the list? Or did we miss a hidden classic that deserves its time in the spotlight? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you love a good deep-sea showdown, and don't forget to subscribe for more cinematic journeys below the surface. The hunt isn't over. What will you discover next?